Our first reading comes from the Old Testament. It's from Genesis chapter 18. We read verses 1 through 10. This great act of hospitality on the part of Abraham and Sarah. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby, and when he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them, and he bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat, that you may be refreshed, and then go on your way now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered, "do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent and said to Sarah, "Quick, get 3 seahs of the finest flour and knead it and bake some bread." Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice tender calf and gave it to the servant, who hurried to prepare it. And then he brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under the tree. "Where's your wife Sarah?" they asked. "She's there in the tent," he said. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." In the New Testament, we read this short story from the Gospel of Luke, Luke chapter 10. Jesus goes to the home of Martha and engages both Martha and Mary in what he is doing. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to them. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and said, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, and indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Amen. This is the word of the Lord. I grew up with 2 sisters, and I have 3 daughters. So I have many years, decades, I suppose actually a whole lifetime of observing how sisters are and how they operate. And it's possible to be, within the span of 10 minutes, best friends, bitter rivals, competitors, comforters, hairdressers, and hair pullers. From sharing dresses to tearing dresses, tear-filled movie watching to tear-filled screaming matches, and everything else in between, all in the span of about 10 minutes, if you're lucky. I've always thought, and I think this is true, it's anecdotal, but it's my thought, that boys are easier to raise than girls are for about the first 10 years of life. Boys are harder than girls are for the first 10 years of life, and then it sort of flip-flops around 10 or 11. And I say this because I grew up with 2 brothers, and so I also know a little bit about how brothers operate. Boys, like my brothers and me, will punch it out and will tackle problems head on, meaning each other, and just be physically all over the place, especially when engaged in conflict. There are several bad Jones Brothers moments that we look back on now with some chagrin. One of my brothers tackled me in the front yard over a shrub, and a stick went pretty deep into my knee and needed to be surgically removed. That was a glorious moment. On another occasion, in a fit of extreme anger, I chased my 2 older brothers up the back stairs and down the front stairs, and we made this loop of anger because I was so angry at them for a trick that they played on me, and I never quite could catch them. But if I had, man, kaboom. I think brothers are physically sort of destructive in conflict, especially when they're younger. But girls somehow become really skilled in all the ways of psychological warfare. It just happens, especially around age 12 or 13. I once heard Garrison Keillor say on a Prairie Home Companion that if you're a 13-year-old girl and you don't make your parents cry regularly, then you're just not trying hard enough. In our house, I observed that a well-timed, really perfectly lobbed verbal grenade would just set off this incredible explosion. One sister knew exactly what it would do to the other sister if she said, with these perfectly arched eyebrows, if she said to that other sister on the way out the door to school and we were already running late, "Oh, you're not going to wear that top today, are you?" Kaboom. I remember sipping my coffee and hearing that remark and saying, "Oh boy, here we go." And then we'd be even later to school after 5 wardrobe changes. Another sister, no shrinking, Violet, knew what it would do to the older, firstborn, rule-following, order-creating sister if she rearranged anything, changed anything, moved these clothes from where they're supposed to live 2 feet over here, or changed out the charging cords from one device to another just because she would feel like it, or sit in the other sister's place at the dinner table or in the car just because I feel like it. Just kaboom. It just happened all the time. Sisters are really smart that way, no doubt about it. In my own family of origin growing up back in the 70s, we had daily chores that had to be done. Everybody had their own chore. Set the table, feed the dogs, clean off the table, do the dishes, get the clothes off the clothesline in the back. We still had one of those. Now, my sisters figured out pretty quickly that all of those chores were tradable commodities. As in, I'll do your chores for a week if you will ride your bike up to Walgreens and buy me whatever it was. Or I'll do all your chores for a week if you give me 15 minutes of your phone time. That's back when there was one phone on the wall in the hallway that 5 kids had to share. Of course, they never did the chores, and they blamed it on us. There was a fight about that. Somebody got angry about all the things that were unfair, and on and on and on. Siblings. That was 45 years ago, as I counted up. But it is interesting, when our family gets together, all 5 of us now, adults, a little more mature, it is funny how those family dynamics have a way of coming back. And people sort of go back to the way they were. They revisit us. And the stakes are, of course, higher now, maybe more valuable than phone time. And it's always interesting when there are aging parents in the mix and things to decide or things to divide up. Siblings. So there is a lot going on in this reading about Jesus' visit to Martha's home. But I can promise you this. The conflict between them did not start when Jesus walked into their house that night. Not at all. It started years before this. It originated when they were born into being sisters. And what we see is just one snapshot of an overall relationship between Mary and Martha. And I think their relationship is actually really strong and really good, but they know how to push each other's buttons. Now, there are things we have to remember about Mary and Martha that we learn some in Luke, but also in other Gospels, especially the Gospel of John. The most important thing to remember about them is that they have this really close friendship with Jesus. Along with their brother Lazarus, Jesus visits their home. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus are all really close. And Lazarus isn't mentioned here, but we know how deeply hurt that Mary was when Jesus didn't come soon enough to save Lazarus' life when he died. In John 11, Jesus raises him back from the dead, but Mary is so upset because Jesus takes too long to get there. She won't even leave their house to go see him when she hears that Jesus has come to Bethany. She is so disappointed. They're so close. And this story from Luke is likely not the first time that Jesus has been in their home or that they've met. It's almost certain that he knew them before this, possibly even that their families were friends and that he's known them for many, many years. He is so glad, we can see, to receive their hospitality and to receive their support. Now, showing hospitality in that culture, it meant everything. People were expected, socially, conventionally, the rules of the day, you were expected to go out of your way to show hospitality when someone came to your home. And it could even be strangers. That's what this reading from Genesis 18 is all about. It's incumbent upon Abraham and Sarah and their reputations to be hospitable and to kill the fatted calf and to go out of their way. And we just can't appreciate that in the same way today as it was in their culture back then. But Martha clearly knows these rules for hospitality. She is clearly steeped in them. She knows what's expected of her. Now, it's interesting. Nowhere in the New Testament does it say which sister is older and which sister is younger. But we know that Martha is the older sister, don't we? I mean, we don't know that, but it seems like she's older and that Mary is the younger sister. The Bible never says that, but Martha is the rule follower. She knows all the cultural expectations and the social rules. It's her home, and she is responsible for making sure that everything is ready, that the meal is prepared for Jesus and likely most, if not all, of his other disciples. And she is so agitated with Mary. I can just hear her. There she goes again, leaving all the heavy lifting and preparations for me to handle like she always does. I have to do everything. As she glared at Mary's direction. Kaboom. And then maybe Mary unknowingly played a part in this too. I mean, she probably knew also that the preparations were to be made, but she chose to sit at Jesus' feet. She said to herself, I know there's work to do, but Jesus is here. And Martha is just going to boss me around anyway, like she always does. I'll definitely rather listen to Jesus than to my sister. And she sends her eyes in Martha's direction. Kaboom. Again. So we know how this plays out. I mean, there's Jesus. He is talking and teaching. Mary is listening and learning. She is soaking up everything that Jesus teaches. It says that she is sitting at Jesus' feet. Now, this is an expression for what followers would do for their rabbis. They would sit at their feet and learn. And to sit at his feet meant that she was a student and a close follower. And here we see something that's just so important for Jesus and his ministry and how unconventional he was by the standards of his day. Unlike any other rabbi, Jesus intentionally included women and men in his group of followers. He taught mixed audiences in ways that never would have happened in that culture. Jesus elevated the status of women in his movement in ways that society around them did not. Women were usually left outside the house or only in the role of food preparation. But with Jesus, it is so different. We see it here and in other places. He was so glad to welcome women like Mary as a follower, learning and receiving from this best rabbi ever. And so Martha's frustration, it just boils over, and it actually becomes public when she makes a statement to Jesus, but everybody else is right there listening. She says, Lord, don't you care? And pause right there to see her technique and what she is doing. She's angry with her sister, but now she is sort of shifting blame onto Jesus. And this happens in his ministry. People question his motivation. They question his intent, his priorities. Lord, don't you care? Is a question that people ask all the time. Even his own disciples when they are threatened. Lord, don't you care that we're about to drown? They say to Jesus when they're caught in a storm on the Sea of Galilee. Lord, don't you care? Say most of us when we're about to drown in a storm of life even today. When a diagnosis comes, when a family member leaves in conflict, when there's a family financial crisis, a beloved spouse dies, a child goes into a crisis, we wonder if God cares and if God sees us and knows what we're going through. Lord, don't you care? Well, of course he does. He does. He cares about you and everything you go through. He cares immensely. He cares deeply about Martha and Mary. And now that Martha has sort of publicly called him out and shown her frustration, he even cares more. And he has this honest conversation with Martha, which is another sign of how much he cares. I love how he says her name twice. Martha, Martha, I do care. And part of the problem for Martha is what this story, I think, reveals on the surface, and it is that Martha's doing all the work to prepare food and provide hospitality according to all the social norms. She is so concerned about doing what is right and doing what is expected of her that she can't see who is right in front of her and what he is offering her. She wants to provide for Jesus because she's supposed to, and she wants to, but she can't hear all that he is ready to provide for her. Mary does see that. She sits at his feet, absorbs all this wisdom, but Martha, it says, is distracted. Distracted by all these things that she has to do. Distracted and kept away from what really matters, which is discipleship to Jesus. So Jesus gently corrects his friend Martha, reminds her that listening to him and receiving good godly wisdom is more important than when the meal will be ready or what they're going to eat. And it's just a gentle reminder to all of us who are Marthas that as important as doing the duty and doing the right things and living up to expectations, and that is sometimes important, listening to Jesus is even more important. It is essential. And I think about this all the time with all the jobs and responsibilities we have around this church that would never get done if it weren't for all of the Marthas among us. And that includes some men as well as all the women. I mean, we would be sunk without them here. But it's just such a helpful reminder that even in the midst of all of the good things and the busyness and the jobs and the things that need to get done, it is so easy for all of us to get distracted and to have our faith and our discipleship moved aside by all of these things that we believe we have to do. Jesus is saying, take care of your spiritual life. Listen, pray, read, worship. Take care of that first, and then worry about the rest later. The other thing I see in this as I finish up is there is something else going on in this encounter that's below the surface, and it does have to do with the relationship between these two sisters, and it probably applies also to all siblings. Jesus knows that Martha's frustration with Mary, of which this is only one instance, it's certainly something that runs longer and deeper than this one moment. He knows it is a spiritual barrier for her, that her relationship with her sister is an obstacle to a better life and a deeper relationship for her, Martha, with Jesus. And her anger over her sister is keeping her from listening and knowing Jesus better. And this happens so often in families and among siblings or between generations. There's several places in the New Testament where we see family conflict hindering people's faith. One time in the crowd, a man shouts out, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And Jesus answers by telling him a story, one of his most famous parables, about the dangers of wealth. In the Sermon on the Mount, he says, if you are worshiping and you realize that your brother or sister has something against you, then leave your sacrifice at the altar and first go be reconciled, then come back and make your offering. And it can be true in any family relationship, in siblings, between parents, sisters, brothers. It can be true in your family like it is in mine. It's just true that when there's conflict between a brother or a parent or a child, that conflict just eats away at you. I don't know if you've ever done this, which I have done, which is argue in my head with a brother or sister and they're not even around. I'm just doing it on my own, and I refuse to let go of something that happened years ago. Maybe you can't forgive one of your siblings and how they treated your mom when she was dying, or how a brother never paid your dad back for a house-saving loan all those years ago. Someone made a mistake that just won't leave your mind. Maybe you don't respect what he or she does for a living, or how they live, or what they do. Perhaps Jesus is trying to say to you in a gentle but unmistakable tone, they're not the problem. You are. You are distracted by so many things, and you're so angry amidst all these distractions that you can't even see all of the blessings that are right in front of you. So when it comes to siblings and family and faith, when it comes to our relationship with Christ, I mean, we're probably all Marthas in one way or another with someone. We let rivalries or family dynamics come in between not only us and them, but also between ourselves and Jesus. Can you let them go? Can you let whoever Mary is for you in your life off the hook? Can you just let her be herself and whatever gifts and talents that she may have, because they probably complement your own? Can you forgive whatever it was that happened long ago? Can you accept forgiveness if it needs to be given to you and you need to receive it? May God bless all the Marys and the Marthas among us, which is probably all of us at some point. May we be as close to Jesus as they were in their discipleship. May we know the kind of friendship that they had with Jesus and with each other as siblings. Amen.